We've got a small selection here of dries and emergers. You know, there's lots of different patterns out there, and certain fisheries, you know, there seems to be certain flies that work consistently well on those waters. Not to say others won't, but you know, if you know for a fact that this specific fly seems to be the one that works well, then obviously get to use it. But anyway, right here we got some little tiny dries. Griffiths gnats are really good, and we've got some little grey-bodied, grizzled hackled flies. You know, a lot of times, like I said, it's more a point of getting the fish to see your flies, so more so than necessarily the exact pattern, so to speak. It's where they're looking that's important. And we've got a little mayfly emerger, kind of like a crippled dun kind of pattern. They can work exceptionally well when we've got little betas hatching. And we got here's these little chronoid midge emergers. And they represent mayfly emergers as well. You know, I think by definition of the shape of the fly, coloration, and the fact that it's micro small, that's it right there. Size of the fly, probably overall coloration, but more importantly, exactly where you're presenting the fly to the fish are the important issues. Leader tippet sections, to some extent that's going to be determined by the nature of the water you're fishing. But to all intensive purposes, what you're going to do, whether you use a manufactured factory taper leader and or you build your own system, it amounts to this at the end of the day. It has to terminate in such a way as A, that you get good turnover, and that ultimately the fly that you're using as a representation for the emerger fishes in exactly the right position relative to its depth. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of different options here, which we have discussed also so far as the nature of the materials. This is a little tiny micro yarn indicator. To the end of it, I've added, the lower is 6x, and I've added approximately about 15 inches of it. You need a fair amount of separation like that, so you tend to get that better turnover in the air as the fly lands, and it keeps it away from your indicator. So that's your first option. Now, if we are fishing dry flies, little small micro dries, like these guys, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't enhance your visibility by putting another dry fly. Okay, you got two choices. The first is you use a detached dropper. So you tie your larger dry fly on this detached dropper, and or your smaller, whichever way you choose to do it. And the second is that you tie that dry fly in line. In other words, what we're going to do is we're going to tie the first fly. Okay, we've got that done. We now have a couple of options so far as increasing our tippet to either our dry or our emerger. One is we tie it to the bend of this hook. The second is we go through the eye. And in the case of very small flies, that's not always easy to get two sections of tippet through that. And the obvious answer is this. We're going to take our additional tippet section and we're going to put it above the fly. We're then going to fold both the fly down and the tippet material above, which is back to our leader system, and form a loop. And we're going to put our additional tippet, which is going to be what our second or tail fly is going to be added to, through that loop. And we're going to make a davy knot. Or you can use whatever knot you choose, but to all intents and purposes, this is the easiest way. Over and under, through, catch the tag, draw that down taut. Okay, now watch what's going to happen. This will slide down to the fly above the eye. And that's a very, very neat way to attach a small dry prior to the termination of your emerger or secondary dry. What I'm doing here, I've got a few fish working on emergers here, a little ways across stream from me, and we're fishing this midge emerger pattern there, just in the meniscus, right in the surface film. Make sure that when you put the initial presentation down of your fly, it's well upstream of where the fish are. Don't cast over them, don't cast on them. If you need to make corrections to bring the fly back into alignment to where you roughly see the general act zone of fish, you've got plenty of time upstream just to pull that back, get it into the feeding zone, and let it drift way past those fish before you pick it up and recast again. Don't let them know you're there. We come right across stream, make a little upstream mend, set up your drift line well before you get to the fish. What we want to avoid is any unnecessary drag or movement on that fly. Some of these trout have seen an awful lot in their time, and I'm always easily convinced that what you're doing is natural, and there we go. Perfect line of drift. Fish came right up, popped just down to the surface, took that emerger as he should. Ain't no monster fish, but that don't matter. You know, those little fish can be as difficult to catch as those big fish, believe me. You know, the size of the fish is not the issue at the end of the day. It's the enjoyable factor is deceiving them when you know they're pretty tough to catch most of the time. Now we just got that little emerger right there on the top lip. And we'll take that out and just let this little guy free. There's a fair number of fish working the surface out there, taking midge emergers and some of those little emerged midge on the surface. I have a bit of or shall we say a downstream wind coming. Your initial choice of presentation should be well upstream of the fish, which allows you a little bit of time to make a correction to get that fly to come down into the vision or the zone where you know those fish are. We're working in a short section of water where those fish you visually seem to be consistently working. Worry about getting perfect drifts within that short zone. That's the important thing. The way to go about doing it is this. Don't directly cast straight. If the fish was here, I'm not going to cast straight downstream to him. I want to be at an angle, left side or right side of that fish. And I'm going to drop short with a cast and make sure that when I do that, I've got slack line that enables that fly to carry on drifting down past that fish without any drag. And again, when you pick up, just come up nice and gentle. Don't make a lot of surface disturbance out there. Drop it down nice and steady so it lands like a piece of thistle on the water, no surface disturbance, and that fish came up sweet as a nut and took the fly. Exactly as we wanted. Everything's got to take time. And if you do it right, you should catch the fish. Come on, oh no, we got a brook trout. You know, we stock brook trout on our rivers, but you know, they're not quite so easy to find anymore like they used to be at one time. They're so pretty. You gotta kind of be careful too with these little tiny hooks. You know, they don't really have too much flesh to hang into, and you know, it don't take much to pull the fly out, and that really don't matter to me too none. You know, the joy for me is really deceiving that fish. I had to get a lot of things right. Come on. There you go. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? White Norfolk River brook trout. Very good. We're just going to have a quick check here about the issues that we discussed when we're fishing emergers. Bear in mind that the visible zone of what the fish can see, the natural and or your artificial, is very, very small, which in consequence means our fly has to fish within that visible zone. Riggings. We have got essentially 4 basic options. The one is that we fish a straight line system with a leader to a tippet section determined by whatever size of the fly we're using. Could be 5x, 6x, 7x or 8x in extreme circumstances, directly to our fly. The next option we've got is to place an indicator and or a sighter somewhere prior to the fly. In other words, it could be 12 inches, could be 6 inches, could be 15 or 18. Because it's not always easy to see in certain water conditions the fact that a fish take the fly. Because they don't move real far when they take it, it's just they come up, they take it, it's real gentle. Next option we've got is we can fish an inline system with a dry fly attached to the eye or the bend, or as I demonstrated to you, if it's a very small eye on the hook, you can't necessarily get two pieces of tippet through it, so you actually tie the connection above the eye of the hook, and then we can terminate that with our emerger or our dry. And then our fourth option is that we fish as a detached dropper a dry fly, and then at a given distance, which could be 6, 8, 12, 15, 20 inches, to the termination being our emerger and or our dry fly.